What's going on, Guardians, and welcome back. Today we are breaking down one of the biggest melee system overhauls Destiny has ever seen, and some exotic tuning that you are not going to want to miss. Bungie has just dropped some insane news coming with the Edge of Fates release on July 15th. If you enjoyed today's video, feel free to leave a like, drop a comment down below what you're most excited about, and of course, subscribe if you are new. And without further ado, let's get into these changes. Bungie is overhauling melee damage in a big way. It's a shift from multiplicative damage to additive stacking damage in PvE. But what does that mean? Before, essentially, two 50% buffs gave a total of 125%. Now they are going to be additive, giving a flat 100%. Is it a lower ceiling? Sure. But now Bungie can safely buff more sources, creating stronger and more varied melee builds. All melee buffs now stack additively at full strength, and yes, melee buffs are going to get an increase to reflect this as well. Plus, with the new melee stat coming with Armor 3.0, if you push over 100, you will be getting a scaling bonus based on the damage up to that 200 new stat. This bonus is going to be pretty good, and I'm really excited to see what melee builds actually can be across all subclasses and classes in general, and it's going to pair beautifully with some fantastic exotics that we're going to get into. Also, melees no longer affect Scorch and Ignition damage scaling, which is going to keep elemental verbs consistent no matter the trigger. Now, we can't talk melee damage without bringing up glaives, because they're officially going to be treated as an unpowered melee, meaning that they will scale with your melee stat, as well as perks like Syntheseps, Wormgod's Caress, Spark of Feedback, and more. But due to the balance across that axis, glaive melee damage in PvE has been reduced. Against minors and majors, it has been reduced by 40%. Against champions, it has been reduced by 28.5%. And against bosses, it has been reduced by 50%. Now, we know Bungie likes to toss out these numbers, but we're going to have to see for ourselves if those numbers are accurate. But thanks to full stacking and synergy, glaive melees are still going to be a top tier pick for DPS builds, and there's an exciting hunter build that I cannot wait to see thrive. And since glaives will no longer be considered weapon damage with their melee, and it's now going to be considered that unpowered melee, they're going to get an increase from Syntheseps, Knockout, Offensive Bulwark, Combination Blow, Spark of Feedback, Wormgod Caress, Banner of War, and Stylus Executioner. However, they will no longer get the weapon damage bonus from Radiant. Now, along with the changes to melees in general, there's obviously going to be some class-specific changes too. With Prismatic, you've got Facet of Courage. Melee damage is going to be increased from 10% to 50%. With the Spark of Feedback on Arc, your PvE melee damage is going to be increased from 75% to 100%, working with Glaive melee at full effect. PvE melee damage is also no longer decreased when using Syntheseps, Liar's Handshake, Knockout, Wormgod Caress, 1-2 Punch, or Winter's Guile. Now, with Titans, Roaring Flame specifically has been increased from 73% to 200%. And as note, Roaring Flames increases solar ability damage, and Glaive melee is always kinetic. So they've opted to follow the rules as written for this for now. So Roaring Flames is not going to scale Glaive melee damage. Though melee damage bonus is no longer decreased when you're using Paragon Greaves, Wormgod Caress, 1-2 Punch, or Syntheseps. For Knockout, the PvE uncharged melee damage has been increased from 100 to 160%, and the charged melee damage has been increased from 50% to 160%. The increase to melee damage now will work with glaives as well at full effect. For Offensive Bulwark, PvE melee damage has been increased from 100% to 160%, and it's going to have an increased melee damage working with glaives as well. Melee damage bonus is no longer decreased when using Syntheseps. Now, Banner of War, melee damage for users and allies has been increased from 40% to 100%. It is no longer decreased when using Wormgod Caress, Syntheseps, or the Glaive melee. And the damage bonus provided to Blade's Fury is going to stay unchanged. For Stylus Executioner on Hunters, your PvE melee damage has been increased from 200% to 300%, working with Glaive melee at full effect, and it now is going to work with every single melee. meaning your projectile melee abilities like Threaded Spike will benefit from the increase to damage if you're using it at point blank range. Then for Combination Blow, your PvE damage has been increased from 309% to 400%, while your increased melee damage will work with full glaive melee at full effect. It now works with Ascension in PvE, and if only they can change the subclass or the class item specific mods to work with Ascension, I'd be stoked. But having the ability to fully work with grapple melee in PvE is going to be insane for hunters. Now, along with that, there are some exotic weapon changes as well. First up is Monte Carlo. Its Catalyst melee now deals full damage to bosses and champions. Winter Bite benefits from melee buffs, but it did have its damage against bosses slightly reduced. And Bastion, its damage buff is now 300% and will last for 3 seconds with Saint's Fist. That is going to be an insane change. These weapons are now going to fully integrate into melee builds. And don't get me wrong, Bastion has a pretty good pick, especially in the current sandbox with the artifact mods that we have. But with its damage increase as well as Saint's Fist lasting for longer, this is going to be a pretty insane pick in in-game content. Along with the changes to some exotic weapon perks, we also have some changes to weapon perks in general. First up is Close to Melee. PvE melee glaive damage bonus will increase from 30% to 60%. And then there's 1-2 punch, which is going to bring back these punch builds insanely well. PvE melee damage is going to increase from 100 to 150%. It now works with all melee abilities. Melee damage is no longer decreased when using Liar's Handshake, and increase the time the perk is active to 3 seconds. Personally, I'm really excited to see how Combination Blow with a grapple melee and Liar's Handshake pairs with a 1-2 punch build. It's going to be pretty insane, and I'm excited to give it a try. Now, we've mentioned some exotic armor pieces in previous spots in this video, so of course we have to go over the exotic armor tuning coming with the Edge of Fate, starting with Hunters. Dragon Shadow and Speedloader Slacks have been very similar style exotics, so they've decided to switch some of that up, where Dragon Shadow has gained many of the stats from Speedloaders and had its perk updated to better fit with the new suit of player stats. So Dragon Shadow will now passively increase weapon stability and ready speed. Dodging will reload your equipped weapon only. It's no longer going to reload holstered weapons, but by activating your dodge ability, it will grant the following effects: increased stability and handling, increased movement speed, increased sprint, slide, and ADF stray speeds, as well as increasing your class stat. Meaning it's just going to give you a bonus to your class ability stat anyways, so you're going to be able to get your dodge back faster. Now, with Speedloader Slacks, it's adjusted the tight fit perk, so dodging reloads all weapons and grants increased handling and reload speed for you and nearby allies. While that buff is active, additional dodges will increase the strength of the buff and refresh the timer. And when you deal sustained damage, it's going to grant you class ability energy. I feel like Speedloader Slacks, if they do it well, is just going to constantly be up in harder activity where you're just constantly doing damage, dodging. But honestly, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Both Speedloader and Dragon Shadow definitely seem a lot more of PvP perks and exotics, but I digress. Let's get into Mask of Bacchus. The effects for Mask of Bacchus are now active whether an arc or a stasis super is equipped. And reworking the Light Shift perk, it no longer provides a non-stacking surge damage bonus, but it's going to grant 10% damage for eligible weapons. Stasis weapons, arc weapons, and yes, Lord of Wolves will get that 10% bonus as well. It's going to stack up to 3 times, meaning you'll get a 30% damage increase with Mask of Bacchus on Lord of Wolves. That's nuts. Now, while it's active, weapon final blows will grant class ability energy, meaning Mask of Bacchus is going to be a PvE exotic for once. And remember, we are getting an arc and stasis weapon, an exotic hand cannon coming the Edge of Fate, so I'm excited to see Mask of Bacchus builds with that specifically. Now, Kefbri's Sting has been a fairly niche PvP exotic for quite a while, so reworking it to something a bit more broadly used will be interesting. It's removed the automatic smoke bomb activation when you use your melee, and it's removed True Sight when dealing damage with a smoke bomb. What they've added is killing a weakened target creates a burst of weakening smoke and returns smoke bomb energy. Definitely can't really see that being a PvP exotic anymore. It definitely feels it's going to be more of a PvE exotic, but we'll see how that plays out. Now, with Oath Keepers, it hasn't really been worth the time investment to overdraw for the damage bonus, so they've tuned it a little bit to make it better for higher potential payout. It's increased the max damage from 150% to 200%, and it now provides more of the total damage bonus earlier in the overdraw. Then there's Blight Ranger. This already had a rework, however, after its cancellation effect, it still didn't feel worth really any investment into it, especially due to a bug on how its damage scaled. Now, they fixed an issue where canceling damage was not consistently scaling based on Volatic mirror progress, and they've adjusted its meter behavior. It now requires 25% less reflections to reach maximum, it fills more evenly, and blocking melee attacks now count as a reflection, which is a huge change. And the maximum cancellation damage is increased by 50%. Minimum cancellation damage is also increased, but by 150%. It's now going to apply blind before dealing damage, and it's updated audio and visuals and timing of the blinding to make it better reflect its impact. So that's it for the Hunter reworks right there. Now there's Titan's Crest of Alpha Loopy. This has added additional effects when sustained damage while behind a barricade will trigger another smaller healing pulse, and healing your allies grants you barricade energy. Then for Phoenix Cradle, they've updated visual effects on sunspots while the user has Phoenix Cradle on to look more clearly supportive for everyone to see. Then the added effects, dealing sustained solar weapon damage in a sunspot will extend its duration. Providing solar buffs to allies has a chance to create a sunspot at your feet. And then for MK44 Standicides, which has been really not used since the introduction of Juggernaut, they've changed it a little bit, so when you're sprinting with Juggernaut active, it's periodically going to grant you a stack of static charge, and while sprinting while amplified will create an area behind you that lets your allies get a speed boost. Still can't really see this being used, but we'll see how it plays out. Then the Path of Burning Step has increased solar weapon damage and solar ignition damage based on the number of stacks of Roaring Flame that you have. So remember, Roaring Flame stacks up to 3 times. 1 stack is plus 10%, 2 stacks is plus 15, 3 stacks is plus 20 for bonus super or solar weapon damage. Now, 5, 10, 15% bonus to your ignition damage based on the stacks you have. These stacks will also work with surge mods, and it's going to reduce the duration of suspend, slow, and freeze effects applied to you, which is going to be really nice, especially considering there are enemies on Kepler that can do those, and it makes it annoying to get out of. Now for Avian Leap, it's always been a pretty potent choice, but it's now going to increase the duration of suspend applied by enhanced Drenger's Lashes. Then there's Actium War Rig. Actium's always been kind of a meme, but it's been fun to use. But they're kind of changing it, so think Worm God's Caress for auto rifles and machine guns. Because auto rifles and machine gun final blows will now increase stability, ammo generation, but also damage, and it's going to stack up to 10 times. High stat counts do expire more quickly, but remember, Thunderlord benefits from this, and if it's getting a weapon damage, I'm pretty excited to see how this is going to play out with Thunderlord and Actium War Rig and all of the lightning bolts and the bolt charge that you can create from it. Then with Spirit of Alpha Loopy, they are adding that healing your allies grants class ability energy. For the Warlocks, we've got Starfire Protocol, which now activates on radiant damage, and it increases the fusion grenade energy from dealing damage from 2.5% to 5%, reduces fusion grenade energy gained from final blows from 20% to 15%. Then there's Wings of Sacred Dawn that are getting a similar treatment to Mana Core, so combatants will be less accurate towards you while Tome of Dawn is active. And then while you have a Solar Super equipped, Solar Weapon Final Blows now grant restoration and reload your stowed weapons. So that's actually not a bad change to it. I still don't know if I'm going to use it in in-game content, but hey, we'll give it a try. Then there's Fellwinter's Helm that everyone forgot existed. They've added that powered melee damage weakens targets. It applies a 15% weaken, and those weaken effects apply by the burst via melee or finisher final blows are unchanged. Then for Prometheum Spurs, they've reworked the perks Ember of Light, so while you have a Solar Super equipped, weapon defeats grant class ability energy, and weapon defeats in a rift grant a different solar verb depending on the rift. So while you're in a healing rift, weapon damage defeats will create a pulse that grants radiant to you and nearby allies, while you're in a powering rift, weapon defeats instead will grant cure to you and nearby allies, just giving you the opposite effect essentially of the rift that you're standing in. Now, there's Boots of the Assembler, where your Noble Seekers no longer spawn in waves. They instead spawn at a consistent rate based on the fire team. I'm not going to lie to you, I've never used this exotic, so I don't know how it works, but a change is a change. The Noble Seeker's tracking range has changed to 40 meters always, and they will prioritize allies who have not been healed in the last 8 seconds. Now, Noble Seekers can now target allies standing in the rift, producing them. They will not target an ally more than once every 4 seconds. Noble Seekers detonate when passing near an ally they are not targeting. They will still detonate if they make direct impact with an ally they're not targeting. And they no longer grant extended rift duration on Noble Seeker impacts with allies. Instead, it's going to grant you class ability energy on Noble Seeker impacts, and it will scale based on the fire team. Now, Geomag Stabilizers has been an insane pick this season, just with Bolt Charge and the rework to some arc verbs. So getting a little bit of a rework where reduced super energy granted by Onyx traces to 4%, so it is getting a nerf and will no longer get that 7% increase. They've returned sprinting to top off Bolt Charge, and it decreased Bolt Charge stacks required before sprinting will grant an additional stack from 6 to 5. It's decreased the amount of time required for sprinting to start granting Bolt Charge from 2 seconds to 1, and they've increased the Bolt Charge that is granted while this effect is active from every 1.5 seconds to 1 every 0.33 seconds. So yes, there is a little bit of a nerf in terms of super regen, but there's a little bit of a buff there at the same time. And there you have it, some insane changes coming to Destiny 2's Edge of Fate release on July 15th. Like I said, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to comment down below what you're looking forward to, leave a like, and subscribe if you guys are new. And remember, next Tuesday is going to be the first of a live stream, June 24th at 10 a.m. Pacific. There's going to be an in-depth look at the Edge of Fate, with dev team taking the floor, ready to share some mini details about Armor 3.0, as well as the new ability stat system. Plus, if you watch for 15 minutes with your Bungie ID linked on Twitch, you will get the Astromancy emblem, which is one of the better Twitch drops that I've seen in a while. But like always, Guardians, thank you so much for coming and watching, and I will catch you in the next one.